Hello and welcome to this new workshop where I will demonstrate how you can close the most simple way a mobius infinity scarf or a caul or even a headband. The only thing you need beside your yarn and your machine is a crochet hook, but we are not going to crochet. For this workshop we need a circular knitting machine. It really does not matter what machine you have. I'm only demonstrating the technique and you can use it with every machine. Your working yarn, a pair of scissors, a crochet hook. I'm using a European size 5.5. You have to convert it to your regular needle size in your country because I'm Dutch. And I'm using two colors of different colors yarn as scrap yarn or waste yarn, and that's it. So hey, let's go. We are going to cast on with our scrap yarn color, and we just do our regular zigzag cast on all the way around. And we finish behind the last needle and we put our yarn into our feeder between the last and the first needle. And then we are going to knit a few rounds. You don't have to knit a lot of rounds. I knit 3 rounds or about that. Take a moment to check that the loops are in place so you don't get tucked stitches. The loops have to be around the 2 little pegs, left and right from each needle when it grabs the yarn. When you have knitted your few rounds, you put your yarn to the inside between the last and the first needle, everything between those two needles. Then take another color of scrap yarn and put it to the inside. Make sure the tail touches the table. You do that also between the last and the first needle. So there's a whole bundle with yarn in the same spot. That's correct. See? You just let them hang and then knit just one row or round with this color. Make sure that the stitches are in place and that you knit the last stitch and put the tail between the last stitch and the last needle and the first needle to the inside, and then take your working yarn, put it into the feeder between the last and the first needle to the inside, making sure that the tail touches the table, everything in place, and start knitting. Just knit a tube that you need for your project, whether it's a caul scarf or a infinity scarf or a mobius scarf. Just knit a scarf, and when you knit a caul, you knit a short tube, and when you knit a infinity scarf, you knit a long tube. I'm going to knit till my yarn is almost finished. I'm going to explain when you do that, because we are going to close the tube with the same piece of yarn. It's a one-piece project, so you're using the yarn in one piece from start till finish. So I continue knitting and I see you back when I have knitted my tube. When you want to use your complete yarn, you have to find the end. As you can see, I'm using a already unraveled piece of yarn, but I have to find my end, and I have to measure a piece that's about 2 times the circumstance of your machine. So you just fold your piece of yarn over your machine 2 times, and that's end you have to mark because you need it to close the tubes. I'm making a loop. You can use a clip or whatever, and then you continue knitting until that mark touches your hand. I'm done now. So I'm going to take the rest of my yarn, whether it's finished or not, and put it to the inside. I stopped before my mark came, so it's very long. And I put the yarn to the inside between the last and the first needle. And then I take a piece of scrap yarn and put it into the inside, make sure that the tail is long enough, and I knit just one row or one round with that piece of yarn. Make sure that every stitch is knitted good. And then put that tail of that one row to the inside. So they are in the same spot, 3 pieces of yarn, same spot. And then take another color of scrap yarn, contrasting to the rest, and knit a couple of rounds with that. Make sure that every loop is in place and knit about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you're a new user of this technique, you can knit 10 rows. It's to prevent that your work unravels, because we are going to take it off the machine without casting off. So, and it doesn't take a lot of time to knit those couple of rows. I'm done. I'm cutting my yarn. I can reuse the yarn all the time, so I'm just cutting it and then I knit. And I keep on knitting when the yarn is finished. And when I'm knitting the second round, it doesn't matter where it starts or finished, the project will be released from the machine. You have to help a little bit, making sure that the loops are in place. Look, this was not in place, so now I have to release it. And then your knitting is done. I'm unrolling my tube and make sure that the outside is the outside that I want to have. So I'm turning it inside out and I'm going to stretch it. I have used a second-hand yarn that was partly knitted, so it's a bit wobbly at one side, but that's over after steaming it. Okay, so make sure that the tails are all in place. This is what your work should look like. This is the already knitted piece. Make sure that the tails are facing towards you, about the middle of your project. Make sure that everything looks like this. And on the left I have my working yarn. This is for a infinity scarf, and for a mobius you twist the left part 2 times and make sure that the yarn ends are facing towards you like they did before twisting. And then put it this side so that the working yarn is at the lower part. And this is the moment where the crochet hook comes in, because we are going to use the hook. We are going to look at the mess we have here. We have our working yarn and we have all those odd color yarn ends. We are going to find our last knitted stitch. That's where the first yarn end and the working yarn comes out. And on the left you have another piece of yarn end, and that comes out of your first knitted stitch. Put your needle in that stitch. When you look, you see that all those vertical stitches are isolated between those 2 colors. We are going to use those stitches. At the other end, you have to find the yarn end of your working yarn, and on the left of that you find the first stitch, and that stitch you are also going to stick your needle in. You see those stitches are also straight in line. We are going to use those isolated stitches. You stick in your needle and then you take your long end of yarn and you grab with your hook the yarn and pulls through the 2 loops on your hook. That's it. Now those 2 ends are connected. You are going to find the next vertical bar, and you stick your needle in it on the piece towards you. And then on the opposite end you find also the next vertical bar. Stick your needle in and then you grab your yarn. You have 3 loops on your hook and you have to wriggle the hook through those 3 loops. This is basically the thing you are going to do for the rest of the stitches. You are going to connect pairs. This is my 3rd pair and I have knitted my tube on a machine with 46 needles. So I have to connect 46 pairs. When I have used a machine with 22 needles, I have to connect 22 pairs. So whatever machine you own, you always have to connect the same amount pairs as the machine has needles. It's not complicated. Make sure that you know how much needles your machine has. I'm at the point where I have to join my last 3 pairs of stitches. This is the first one of the 3. The second one, I have to look at where the yarn tail of the scrap yarn comes out. That's my second last stitch. And the last stitch is where the working yarn begins with coming out. So you can see this long piece of yarn, that's the beginning of your working yarn. So you have to look carefully where those 2 stitches are. I do also another pull through, but that's not necessary. And now I'm done with closing and I have to remove my scrap yarn. This is basically how your work should look like. You have 6 yarn ends all together and I'm going to remove my scrap yarn by just simply pulling out those 1 round knitted pieces of yarn. You can just pull them out easily and that will release our scrap yarn from our project. Because we have made a infinity scarf, the scrap yarn is now around and through the loop, so you have to pull it out carefully. It's not complicated, but it's more easy when you not have a camera between you and your project. But those stitches are not secured, so you can just simply pull out those yarn ends. To be true, you do not know it yet, but your scarf is finished. You just have to release those pieces and this is how your closure looks like. It's a vertical stripe, but that's what it is. You can simply join those 2 ends. It's the beginning and the end piece of yarn of your project. I'm going to knot them twice with my simply knot. And then I'm going to pull those 2 ends to the inside with the hook of the crochet hook. Still not crochet. And I'm pulling them through. And then I pull my work and those ends are disappeared. And now I'm going to remove those 2 ends because I want to reuse them. I don't cut them because yarn is very valuable and this way I can reuse the yarn over and over. And it goes really quick when you take a moment. It's only a few seconds. Everything is released. The hook is making problems. And there we go. My last piece. Removing all those old ends. And this is the finished piece of my infinity scarf with this closure. When you use a single color, you will not notice it, but it's simple and quick, and this is how you can make all sizes scarves that are infinity. Let's go to the coal version because we have to do that a little bit different starting. So, hey yo, let's go. I cannot finish playing with it. I have knitted my coal, not a special row count. I just knit until it touches the table and I have used the same scrap yarn method. The end I use for closure I have at the top. And now I'm going to put half of the caul to the inside by just simply putting it to the inside. Make sure that your working yarn is at the top end. You put them to the inside and then you line them up. It's not complicated. You will find out that where all those yarn ends and are, that they will end up opposite to each other. The inside has the beginning of the project and the outside has the ending of the project with the working yarn. And now we are going to find where to start. This is my working yarn and it comes out of the last knitted stitch with that piece of scrap yarn. And on the left of that, where the other piece of scrap yarn is, you will find your first stitch and you stick in your needle in that first stitch. Then you go to the opposite side and you have to find the stitch where the yarn end is on the right from it. Just as we did with the infinity scarf. And find that stitch, stick in your needle, grab your working yarn, make sure you grab your working yarn, and grab it with your hook and pull through the 2 loops on your hook. And then you are going to connect the next pair on the left of the pair you just connected. Stick in your needle. You see they are between those scrap yarn colors. Stick in your needle in a vertical bar. Find the one on the opposite side on the left of the one you did already. Pull through your hook. Grab your yarn and pull through all 3 loops. From now on you have 3 loops per pair. And you are going to continue joining those pairs. All the way around. Count your pairs because it's important. Then you are sure that you grabbed every pair. So when you have a machine with 48 needles, you have to grab 48 pairs. When you have a machine with 16 needles, you have to grab 16 pairs. So you continue doing this. This yarn is twisted, so it's not the most easiest yarn, but it's going to work. I speed up the video a little bit till we are almost finished. I'm almost done and I'm connecting my last pairs. Make sure you count so you won't forget the last pair. You have to look very carefully where your stitches are, especially those last stitches. You have to find the correct loop. Use the old colors. You can see what stitch is already used and what stitch don't. Oops. When it's not working, you can just pull up a little bit those stitches. It will correct themselves when stretching, and you can pull through your yarn when finished. And then we are going to remove those single row pieces of yarn, scrap yarn. You can just pull them out and then you remove the rest of the scrap yarn by just lifting it off. And then you have your 2 yarn tails, the beginning and the end tails, and you just knot them together. And then your work is almost done. I'm going to pull the yarn ends to the inside with the crochet hook. And I'm cutting off the long pieces that I don't need anymore. And this is how you close a tube like this. This way you can use it as a headband or a caul or even a muff. I love muffs as a hand warmer. You can simply fold the ridge to the inside and nobody will notice. When using these items as a ear warmer or headband or even as a caul, it will not always fit. Fitting depends really on yarn, tension and also the size of a head. But for you now you have learned a simple skill. If you like this video, please give me a thumb up and join my channel if you want to see more videos in the future. And in the description of this video, you will find a link to my other circular knitting machine videos and the links to my different social medias. I also have a See Me Dutch Facebook group. You will find all info in the description of this video. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. With love from Holland. Bye bye.